Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I am thrilled for today's video. We're going to be talking about Sonia G's new brushes. And I just want to mention before we jump into the content of this video that these brushes were sent to me from Sonia and the Beautylish team, and I'm actually getting chills now just saying it. I have never ever been so happy. When I opened up the box of brushes, I was, not only was I completely moved and my breath was completely taken away by the sheer beauty of these brushes, but I just couldn't believe that they had that much faith in me and this video. So I hope I do them justice, but I just wanted to mention that, and I wanted to say thank you to them. A huge, huge thank you. I cannot even express to you how much I appreciate it. So anyway, Sonia G released 8 new brushes. This is a follow-up to her fundamental set, and if you're interested in watching me kind of use these brushes, talk about what they're made out of, the uses for them, kind of share with you some thoughts that Sonia shared with me over email over this past few days since I received these brushes, then please just keep on watching. So I thought I would just go through each brush and talk about each one and demo each one as we go through them. So let's start with the Face 1 brush. This is the brush right here. It has a flat top, and this is the brush that Sonia wanted to design the most. This was what she found to be the most challenging and the type of brush that she thought she has never been able to find on the market herself. So we actually had a nice bonding moment because we talked about how these type of powder brushes, generally, if I see them, I kind of avoid them. I find that when I use brushes like this and I dip them into powder and I start applying it to my face, what happens is I find that when I take my brush away, I see foundation on my brush and I know that I've been moving the product around. So the brushes are usually, maybe the bristles are a little bit too harsh, or they're packed a little bit too densely. So when I saw this brush in there, I was really, really hopeful that this was a brush that I could use like loose powders for to kind of set my face and work them in, buff them in without disturbing the foundation underneath. It's funny when something comes into your life and you realize, oh my gosh, like I have all these loose powders, I don't use them very often, and I think it's because I never had the right tool for it. So this is definitely the right tool, at least for me, for loose powders. I've used this now a couple of times and I just love it. It has the right feeling. Some powder brushes are so big and so fluffy. I feel like I'm just, I'm applying and wiping away, applying and wiping away. And I'm like, all I'm doing is making a mess. You see this big cloud of powder everywhere and I'm like, what is even happening? Or like I said, it's too dense and I'm moving everything else around. This is like the perfect balance. This is dyed goat hair, so it is, so obviously it's natural hair. It's soft, but goat hair is not like super duper soft where it hardly picks up any product. So you're gonna get a decent amount of product pickup with goat hair, and when it's dyed, it picks up even more. So it's even a little bit more grippy, if you will. So let's go ahead and use some loose powder. I have the original La Mer loose powder, and like I said, I've had this for so long and I just have never bothered using it. I've tried it with a puff, and this seems way too heavy of an application for me, or I would have applied it with this and then tried to take a brush and brush it out, and it just never seemed to be the right application. So what I have done is I will pour a little bit of the powder out into the cap here, and I'll take the brush and I will just simply dip the head of it into the powder. So there's a decent coating of the powder on the brush. Then I will pounce it to kind of place it everywhere, and then I will bring my hand down the barrel so I have a very light touch, and I'll start to just work it in with round circular buffing motions. And I feel like that works the product in beautifully. Now I have this nice, can you see? I have this really nice light layer of powder, and I don't see any foundation on my brush. And I should mention, I do have foundation, I have concealer down, I did my brows, and that's it. That's the only makeup I have on. I am absolutely loving this. I'm going to do it again on the other side here. And again, I'm just pouncing, and then I start to buff. This is like the answer to all of my loose powder problems. I just can't believe that I haven't been able to find the right brush, and finally, here she is. So I am loving it. Expect to see a lot more loose powder usage in future videos. And it's great, you know, when you pounce it on, I really feel like that's the first step in working it into my skin. There's a nice resistance there, and then as soon as you start to buff, it's lightness. There's such a lightness, there's such a motion to the tips of these fibers. Really, really wonderful. So I'm gonna bring this brush back out at the end because I'm gonna use it to finish my face off with some powders. So let's put that aside for now, and let's move on to these fan brushes. So the Sculpt One brush, which came out with the Fundamental set, this brush is now my absolute favorite for putting down bronzer and contour especially. I love it. It makes really quick work of it. It kind of fits perfectly around like the perimeter of my face, my cheekbones, my jawline. It's just great. So I was really, really super intrigued by these other Sculpt brushes. This one is Sculpt Two, and this one is Sculpt Four. And let me just hold it up next to Sculpt One so you can see the size difference. So you can see that they're considerably smaller, and you can see that between Sculpt 2 and Sculpt 4 looks like it's a little bit like it's had a drunk night, but it is actually angled, which is so cool. So we'll get to this one. Let's talk about Sculpt 2. So this is essentially a smaller version of Sculpt 1. So Sculpt 1 is very, very shall we say beginner friendly, because it gives you just a nice diffused application of your bronzer, your contour. It's easy to blend out. You can use this with almost any powder. It's super soft. It's a lovely brush. Again, you know how much I like this. The Sculpt 2 is like a very concentrated version of that. So it's going to put a very precise placement of contour or bronzer down, or even highlight. And because of the density of these fibers, it's gonna pick up a lot of product. And this is dyed goat hair, so this is gonna pick up a little bit more product than this undyed goat hair. And I found that this is amazing. Again, I feel like these brushes are reintroducing me to products that I have in my collection that I have found difficult to use for one reason or another. And I don't think I've ever realized that it's simply the tool and not either me or me just not liking the product, but I just didn't have the right tool. So what I mean by that is I have two bronzers in my collection that I avoid because I just can't seem to ever pick up enough product. So I have the NARS Laguna bronzer, and this is sort of the new version of the bronzer. It's not like a regular powder. I don't know if this is baked. I am not educated enough in the actual manufacturing of makeup, but all I know is that it's very hard. It's pressed in here really, really hard, and it's just difficult to pick up. The other product I have like that is another bronzer, and it is another sort of redo of an existing product, and this is the Tom Ford Ultimate Bronzer. I have it in the shade Terra. I have the original bronzing powder in Gold Dust, and I just end up using the Gold Dust so much more. It's a lovely bronzer, but I never reach for this one because this is the same thing as the NARS. It's very hard, and you barely pick up any product when you run your finger over it. So when I saw this brush, I was like, could it be perfect for these powders? And of course, lo and behold, they are. So I'm gonna use, if you have the same problem with these powders, then you'll know what I mean. But I'm gonna go ahead, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place the brush on its side, kind of angled, and I'm just gonna run it down the pan. It actually picks up product, and I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. Because this is such a concentrated application, I don't want to just go in and just start going crazy. I want to make sure I'm placing the most amount of product with my first brush placement. So I'm going to start up here by my hairline and where I want this powder, and I'm just going to slowly kind of pounce it there. and then I'm going to slowly work it in. It also works it into the hairline really nicely, so you don't have like that space. Can you see how much product it put down? And historically, when I use this powder, I mean, I have to go in, you know, tap it, rub my brush, whatever brush I'm using, and really work it in. This was just, as you saw, just a few shimmies down the pan, and I got that much powder, and look at that application. Diffused, it's direct, it's precise, but it's diffused. The edges are completely diffused. Loving this, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can take out this bronzer and actually use it. Let's go ahead, let me knock off any excess bronzer I have on here. And now let's go into the Tom Ford Ultimate bronzer. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna shimmy my brush down. And I'm gonna start at the hairline. And if you go in straight, obviously you're gonna get a very severe line, so you may wanna go in at an angle. That will give you more of a diffused application. And then you just wanna work that in. Again, I don't think I've ever picked up that much product out of that particular bronzer, so I am ecstatic. I love this brush. I think it's great if you like a really precise application of contour, of bronzer. I think if you like to contour your nose, this is great too, because you can use just the tip of the brush. It looks big, but I think it could work. You could use just the tip of the brush, and it gives you something shadowy without being too stark, which I like. I don't like anything too severe. And there, you just get a nice, subtle application of that. And now let's talk about Sculpt 4. This one was definitely the most interesting. It has this angle, it's asymmetric, and the bristles definitely get wispier at one end, and this side is a little bit more dense, a little bit more firm, and this side is looser. Well, the bristles are longer, so that makes sense. So I asked Sonia, I said, well, you know, how would you, and she's, you know, and she's great because she gave me a lot of ideas, but I think it's very clear that she really wants you to explore these brushes and kind of find out the best way that you want to use them, because obviously we all use things very, very differently. So she was very good about kind of leading me down a path, but not really kind of telling me exactly what she thought this brush was for. So what we did talk about was, because one side is a little bit more dense and one side is a little bit more fluffy, that the shorter side is really what kind of leads the application. So whichever direction you're going in, you want the shorter side to be in front. So if you're going from hairline to the center, you kind of want it facing the center. And then I'm going to flip it if you're going to work it this way, because this is what's going to lay the product down. The denser side is what's going to pick up more of the product, and then the looser, kind of longer side is what's going to kind of blend it out. Obviously, you can just use this side if you want. You can flick it. You can use just the dense side and flick it. You can use, obviously, both. Again, you can use it however you want, but we talked about how that was probably the most efficient way of using this brush. So I've been loving this with blush and with highlighter. So with blush, it's a really nice, soft, gentle application. With highlighter, you have to be careful. I mean, unless you're really into highlight, but I kind of just went in the way I did with blush, and I was like, whoa, I had a whole lot of highlighter on. This is undyed goat hair. So this is a little bit softer than dyed goat hair. It's gonna pick up a little bit less product. So this really isn't meant for these kind of like hard pan type of products. I bet this would pick up hard pan products better than a lot of my other brushes in my collection, but nothing like this brush. So this one has a softer touch than this one. So let's start with blush. I just grabbed the Tom Ford Paradise Lust blush. This was the blush that came out last year. And this is, it's similar to that bronzer, but I didn't find it difficult to pick up too much. So anyway, I thought that would be a good candidate for this brush. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to concentrate a lot of the placement of the powder at the short end here. And I'm just going to run that over my cheekbone. And I'm going to sweep down to kind of blend it out a little bit. And I love blending out with her fan brushes. I do this a lot with the Sculpt 3 brush, this fan brush that came with the fundamental set. But I will just take it on its side and I will just gently buff it out like this. And there I have like a very seamless blush to bronzer area here. I love how these brushes make powder almost look like they're a cream product on the skin because it buffs them out so beautifully. Next, for highlighter, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the same brush. I'm going to try and clean off a bit of the blush that's on here, but I do want to focus the product on the wispier side because I don't want quite as heavy of an application of highlighter than I do of the blush. While I'm sitting here cleaning this Sculpt 4 brush, I'm reminded that Sonia mentioned that these brushes, it will probably take like 2 or 3 cleanings for these brushes to kind of reach their potential, if you will. They'll like open up, they'll loosen up a little bit, and they'll become, you know, kind of really like true to their form. So you do have to use these a little bit. And like all good natural hair bristle brushes, they will actually last longer the more you use them. They're meant to be used, almost like a fine car. So anyway, let's go into highlighter. I have the Hourglass Ambient Metallic Strobe Lighting Palette. I'm just realizing I think I used this highlighter when I was showing the fundamental set. But anyway, obviously I love this highlighter palette. So I'm gonna go into Lucent and pack some of it onto the fluffier side. And I'm going to just swipe in kind of these downward motions and use the corner here to place it. And then I'm gonna, again, buff it in with the side of the brush. There is a highlighter with the Sculpt 4 brush. I think when it comes to these two brushes, it's almost like preference. I think this is going to give you a very focused, stronger application. Obviously, this brush will also blend out product really nicely, so it's not like you have to worry about it being too stark. But this is definitely a lighter and airier application. But when I look at these, I almost think of like my blush brushes. I have plenty that are just, you know, round, a little bit more traditionally shaped, and then there are some that are angled. And some days I prefer the angled one, and some days I prefer just the straight up round one. So I think this just kind of comes down to personal preference between these two. And that was the other thing that Sonia mentioned. I asked her, you know, why aren't these available as a set like the first brushes that she released? And she said because these are just really specialized brushes that she felt you know, you probably weren't going to want every single one of them, that they were going to fill very specific needs and maybe fill gaps in that fundamental set. So she didn't want to make this a whole set. She really wanted to just have these available individually and kind of pick and choose which ones that you want. So I thought that was very, very thoughtful. I liked how much thought has been put into the releases of her brushes. So we went over all the face ones. So now we're left with the 5 eye brushes. Okay, this is the one that I was most excited for. This is Worker 2. This is the Worker 2 brush, and I have 3 of the Worker 1 brushes because I love that one so much. So here's a Worker 1 brush, and here's the Worker 2. So they are the same height. There's a little bit more brush going on with Worker 2, and this is undyed goat hair, where this is dyed goat hair. So this is going to be a little bit softer. So this is going to have, because it is more brush, it's a little bit fluffier, it's going to be a little bit softer in application than the Worker 1. But they are very, very similar in terms of feel. They are much denser than any kind of typical blending brush. And when I made typical blending brush, here's my Tom Ford 13. You know, this is round, it's fluffy, you know, you kind of go in circular motions. These are a little bit more precise than that. They're not quite as, you know, I'm just gonna like blow out my eyeshadow look. This is definitely kind of like a place and blend and a place and blend. Same with the worker one. So I like these brushes because I find them to be a little bit more multi-use than the typical blending brush. The blending brush, it's almost impossible for that to be precise. That's not really the point of those brushes. But these, you can be precise. You can be, you know, you can kind of use these as shader brushes. You can kind of use these as crease brushes, and you can kind of blend out if you hold it kind of more at like a 45-degree angle. So I really like these brushes. And because this is goat hair, you can use this with cream products as well. So this is great for cream shadows. This is even great for concealer. If you want to apply concealer underneath your eyes or wherever, I think this is a really nice brush for that. So this is a really great multi-use product. So I'm going to go ahead and actually apply some cream shadow with this just so you guys can get a sense of it. So I have a Chanel Ombre Premier shadow here. This is an undertone. Let me take the cap off. This is an undertone. This is a really lovely neutral shade. And I'm just dipping the brush in, kind of swirling it around a little bit just to kind of pack in some product. And I'm going to start by patting and almost like smearing, patting and smearing. And then what I like to do is once I've placed the product down, I'll go along the edges and I'll blend it out, and I'll do windshield wiper motions. Again, because since this brush isn't totally round, it's more oval shaped, I feel like the windshield wiper motion is a little bit better than doing the kind of circular motions. I don't feel like that works that well with these brushes. I really like to do windshield wiper motions and even kind of use the tip and blow out the edges even more. So there is undertone down, and if you're familiar with the Chanel Ombre Premier shadows at all, they're like a putty kind of cream shadows, so they're fairly dense in terms of cream shadows. So let's go ahead and try like a looser cream formula. I have the Tom Ford cream color for eyes, and this is in the shade Caviar, which is like a black pretty much. It has micro glitters in there, but this is a much moussier, creamier shadow, so I just wanted to show you how the application with this brush and this type of formula works. So I'm just going to dip just a little bit, again because it's very loose. You know, with the Ombre Premier, I kind of had to go in there and kind of like warm it up a little bit, you know, grab some onto the brush. This is much looser, and so I just need to tap in there just a little bit to kind of get it. And I'm going to place this just on the outer V area here, and I'm just placing it first, and then I'm going to smoke it out and blend it out. Is that not the loveliest application of cream shadow you've ever seen? It's really, really amazing. I'm loving the Worker 2 for this the most. I also just want to note, and I mentioned this when I covered the fundamental set, that I have not had not one stray bristle fall out of any of these brushes, not one. And I've washed them all, and not one bristle has come out. The quality is outstanding. I absolutely love it. Of course, you can use this brush with powders. It works phenomenally with powders, but I just love that you can use them with cream shadows. And again, I love my cream shadows. I usually just end up using my finger, which is not my favorite thing. And so I'm so glad to have this brush. She also came out with a Builder 2. Now this Builder 2, let me try and find Builder 1. So Builder 1, I remember this was a very kind of mysterious eye brush to me. This was an eye brush that I had never experienced before. So this is Builder 1. The bristles are short. They're very, very fat at the bottom, very densely packed, and then they get very, very thin at the top. I didn't know really what the application was for. I just sort of, you know, I just kind of played around with it. And that's actually when Sonia and I started communicating, was after I filmed the video. And, you know, she was like, you know, just a tip, the reason why I created the Builder 1, it was to kind of help pick up kind of those metallic, shimmery shades and those ones that you're supposed to use with your finger, that this is sort of the brush for you. So I started using this brush every time I had some of those shadows where it's like, oh, maybe you're supposed to use a finger, and it works like a charm. And you just kind of dip it into the pan and you just shimmy it back and forth, and then all of a sudden you'll even start to see the shadow get picked up by the bristles. You'll see them start to come through, and you know that you've picked up enough, and then you just sort of place it and kind of shimmy onto your lid, and you can just see that it just places it there perfectly. So anyway, that's the Builder 1. The Builder 2 is basically just a big version of that. Let me hold them up next to one another. So this is dyed goat hair, and then this is undyed goat hair. So again, these bristles are going to be a little bit softer than the dyed goat hair, but because this brush is fatter and bigger, but it has the same idea. It's very, very fat at the bottom. It gets fine at the top, probably not quite as fine as Builder 1, but with Builder 2, I feel like this mimics a finger, like perfectly. So I was playing around with this and again, like picking up those kind of hard to pick up shadows, and it is wonderful. So I have the new Natasha Denona Tropic palette here, and a lot of these shimmery shades are a little bit difficult to pick up. I think I'm going to try the limoncello color. That's this duochrome shade here. And so I'm going to dip this in, and then I'm going to shimmy it back and forth, and you can see how much product it picks up. And now I can go ahead and place that down. Very soft patting motions, and it applies beautifully. All of my metallics in this palette, because I've been playing around with it so much, have developed a little bit of a hard pan, and brushes like this go right through it. Once you start that shimmering, it loosens everything up, and you know, instead of like going at it with like a spoolie or something, this does it in a much more gentle way, obviously, and it cuts right through any of that hard pan. It is wonderful. And you saw all I did was just shimmy it a little bit, and look at all of that pigment it picked up. There is the limoncello placed down. So again, that's the Builder 2 brush, and it's like definitely up there now with my Worker 1, my Worker 2 brush. I love it because it really really mimics a fingertip. I just love it. And then next we have the two smudger brushes. So we have Smudger 1 and Smudger 2. So Smudger 1 and Smudger 2. So these brushes are the exact same, except that they have different bristles. So this is goat, and this is actually blue squirrel. So when it comes to squirrel hair, it is incredibly soft. Obviously there's many different kinds of squirrel hairs, but in general, squirrel hairs are softer than goat hairs. So you should not use this with a cream or liquid product. You should only use powder products with this. This you can use with cream or powder, and it's a little bit more resilient. It's also not quite as soft. So I love that she gave these two options, because when I look at these brushes, I think these are kind of like my dream liner brushes. And when I get that close to my lash line and that close basically to the opening of my eye, I do get a little bit more sensitive. So something as soft as squirrel is very welcome. So I love this option of the two. So I'm gonna go in with the squirrel brush, and I'm gonna go into Exotic, which is this bright green shade here. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna kind of shimmy the bristles in the pan to pick up the product. Picks up quite a bit of product. And then I'm going to run that along my upper lash line. Can you see that precise line that it gave? There's so much control with this brush. It is amazing. And what I like about this brush more than, let's say, a typical liner brush like this one from Wayne Goss, which is great, but it is flat across. So usually it's flat across or it's angled, but it's very squared off. This is rounded, so you're able to kind of use it at an angle even. I just feel like it fits onto the eye, especially you can get into this inner corner so much more easily. It is quite wonderful. What I also want to point out, I do have a little bit of fallout from the limoncello, but when I use high quality natural haired bristles, I get very, very little fallout. When I've played around with this palette with other brushes, because I was kind of experimenting a little bit, because I know that some people had some issues with a lot of these colors down here. When I was playing around with other brushes, like synthetic haired brushes or whatever, not only was it not really picking up the product, but I just felt like it was getting it everywhere, that it wasn't laying it down onto the eye, it wasn't letting it adhere onto my skin. And with brushes like these, I get very, very little fallout. It was amazing to me. It made such a difference. Let's go ahead and try the Smudger One brush. Again, this is the blue squirrel that is much softer, so I just want to show you if there's any difference in it picking up sort of these difficult metallic shades. So I'm going to go into Tiger Lily, which is this electric blue, and you can probably see that it's already developed some hard pan there. So I'm going to go in and wiggle this brush around. It's so soft that I'm not sure that it's going to pick up quite as much as the goat hair, but let's take a look. The bristles are dark, so you can't really see, but it has picked up quite a bit of product. Let's go ahead and line my lower lash line. There is my lower lash line, and true to its name, it really smudged out that line. You can kind of see it smoked out there. So those are the smudger brushes. I'm loving, loving, loving them for putting down a nice kind of line. They are also great. I wish I could show you everything, but I don't have enough eyes. But when I got these brushes, I was playing around with them actually smudging out eyeliner, and this one works beautifully for that. Because eyeliner is basically a cream product, I would not use the blue squirrel for that. So I would use the Smudger 2 if you want to kind of smudge out some eyeliner or any other kind of cream product along your lash line. I would definitely use Smudger 2. So really beautiful. If you have sensitive eyes, I would go with Smudger 1 because it is much, much softer and much more delicate, especially if you don't think you'll be using too many cream products. This is going to be great. So this brush, I think, was the other brush that I was really, really intrigued by and really thought I'm going to be using this a lot. This is the Pencil 2 brush, and when I saw this, I thought, well, this can give you a smoky application if you want a smoked out kind of eyeliner look. This can smoke out eyeliner looks, and then I thought this is great for kind of like precise cream product applications, and because this is goat hair, you can use cream or liquid products. So this to me also looks like a teeny tiny kind of like buffer brush, and I love the idea of using this along the edges of all of my products, cream and powder, and kind of buffing everything out, and then using it also if I want to go along the edges of my eyeshadow here and maybe place like a little accent color, or just do something a little bit precise. It's so dense too, so it can really buff stuff out. So I'm going to go ahead and dip into, this is Bet? Yeah. This is a Charlotte Tilbury Eyes to Mesmerize in the color Bet. It's this beautiful kind of golden color. And I want to buff that kind of along the upper edge of where I've laid down the cream product and this limoncello. And just add a little something there. And this, I'm going in round buffing motions. But I love that little smoked out edge that I'm getting. Isn't that pretty? I have never found a brush where I can do that with a cream product quite as nicely. Again. All right, so before we leave, I want to go back to that Face 1 brush, which is this one, and I wanted to try using it with a finishing powder. Sometimes I have troubles with, let's say, these hourglass powders going on a little bit too thick. So I wanted to see how this brush worked with it, and it works, of course, magnificently. So let me show you what I've been doing. Not much different from the loose powder. I will dip into the powder, get a bit on the bristles, tap off any kind of loose excess powder, and then again I'll stipple it on, and then I'll buff it in, and I get just the nicest finish of these powders. I'm going to try the dim light. I like using the dim light, which is this shade over here, around like the perimeter of my face. So let me add that to the perimeter of my forehead here. I don't know if you guys can see that finish there. Oh, it's just the softest, most satiny kind of finish. just beautiful. Let me add maybe a little bit of the incandescent light, this one in the middle, to my jawbone here. I really love how it just works the powder in, really makes it one with the skin, really, really seamless. And then I'm gonna buff some of this radiant light over my bronzed area over here. Beautiful, I love how it buffed it out. Really makes it even more airbrushed. Let me do it to the other side. Oh, I'm really, really loving this Face One brush. I'm so excited that I feel like I can use this now with a lot of my loose powders. It just works the powder in so nicely without disturbing anything underneath. I really don't think I've ever found a brush like this. It's either the application is way too light or I'm disturbing whatever's going on underneath. This is so, so wonderful. So before I go, I just want to mention just a few things. I kind of blew right through all of this and dove right into the brushes, assuming that you guys saw my fundamental set video, which of course I'll link down below if you are interested in that. But these brushes are maple wood. They have 4 layers of lacquer, and so it gives the handles this beautiful, beautiful glossy shine. There is Sonia G's label on there. Each brush is also labeled with its name, and then her icon is at the bottom of each brush. And all the ferrules are black, really, really beautiful. And I really loved this second grouping of brushes that she released because it really gives you some options, like with the Sculpt 2 and the Sculpt 4. Do you like the angled? Are you that person that has like the angled blush brush? Then maybe this one is for you. If you really like more of a precise contour application, maybe go for this one. And then the 2 smudger brushes. You know, if you have sensitive eyes, you don't see yourself using cream products at all, this blue squirrel is a great option for you. And of course, if you want something just a little bit more versatile, yet not quite as soft, you have the Smudger 2. I think if you really enjoyed the Builder 1 brush, you would enjoy the Builder 2 probably even more because again, like I said, it's bigger and it has, it really mimics that finger. So love that. And of course, the Worker 2. These Worker brushes, like I said, I have 3 of the Worker 1 brushes. I will probably end up with 3 of the Worker 2 brushes. But the way it handles cream and powder is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. You cannot go wrong with this brush. You can't really go wrong with any of the brushes. So again, thank you so much to Sonia and the Beautylish team for sending these brushes over to me. I am completely infatuated with them. They are the most amazing tools I've ever had the pleasure of using. So thank you very, very much. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please let me know if you have any questions down below in the comment section. I will try and answer them to the best of my knowledge. If I can't, I will pass your question along to Sonia. She's also very communicative on Instagram or whatever, so hit her up there. She's at Sweet Makeup Temptations. You guys probably know that already because she is amazing and she has her blog, sweetmakeuptemptations.com. So please don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I will see you in my next video.